So today's lesson, we're going to pick up where we left off with order of operations, and we're going to continue with evaluating algebraic expressions. Now, we should know that an algebraic expression is nothing more than an expression made up of variables and operations. So you see in our first example, we have variables x and y. We have operations of adding and subtracting. And what we'll be asked to do is substitute given values for x and for y into the algebraic expression and then just follow through with order of operations. So there are a couple of key steps that I want to make sure we follow. They're pretty basic steps, and I'm sure you already know them. But the first step is going to be to substitute known values or substitute values for variables. So any place in that first expression, any place we see an x, we'll be substituting -4. Any place we see a y, we're going to substitute a -1. And I want to make sure that we use parentheses. I want to use parentheses to show very clearly what values that we've substituted in for our variables. And then after we do that, we just want to follow order of operations. So we want to follow GEMDAS. Our groupings, exponents, don't forget multiply and divide is left to right, followed by adding and subtracting left to right. So this is a natural progression from what we did yesterday. So to start with, and for our first example for practice, we're going to be provided the expression y minus xy. Now don't forget, xy means x times y, minus y plus y. So any place I see an x, I'm going to substitute -4. Any place I see y, I'm going to substitute -1. So to start with, for y, we're going to do -1 minus, well, our x value is -4. Let's wrap that in parentheses, times y, -1. And then we're going to subtract our y value. So again, where we see y, we're being told that y equals -1. And then finally, if we don't have enough y's, we're going to add y one more time. Okay, and now we're just going to go through GEMDAS. Now let's just make sure. I said that y was -1. I have a y, there's -1. Another y at xy, -1. Minus y, -1, plus y, -1. The only place I have x is -4. So if we follow through with GEMDAS, then the first thing, I don't see any parentheses. I don't see any exponents. I do see multiplication, so I have to multiply that -4 times -1. -4 times -1 is going to give me 4. And everything else is just going to get rewritten, drop down, just as we normally would do with our GEMDAS with order of operations. So we still have -1 minus the -4 times 4, which is -4, minus -1, and then plus the -1. From there, from what I can see, we have no division, and we have nothing but addition and or subtraction. So as we talked about in class, it might be easier for us to rewrite this as all addition. So from here, I'm going to say -1. Well, keep change plus opposite -4. And then there's another subtraction sign, so -4 becomes my keep. Change plus the opposite of -1 is 1 plus -1. And now we can just move left to right. So -1 plus -4 is -5 plus 1 plus -1. -5 plus 1, if I need the scoreboard, there's a negative, there's a positive. I have my 5 on the negative side, my 1 on the positive side. The negative wins out, and the difference of those numbers is -4 plus -1. And I'm going to run out of room, so all I'm going to do is I'm going to run my answer over here. We can see when we do -4 plus -1, those are on the same side of the scoreboard. If we need to see that, there's -4, there's -1, the -4 wins out, and our final value should be -5. So we saw that we substituted for our x and our y values that were given. We followed order of operations. And more importantly, just to make it clear what values we're substituting in, particularly with negative values, we put those values in parentheses. So what we're going to do is actually skip the second problem. We're going to move down to the third problem because I'm trying to give you a little variety here. So let's start again. For y, I see 4. For x, I see -1. I'm going to subtract my y value, 4, wrap it in parentheses. And well, this is going to get a little bit tricky because we've got parentheses. So we're going to do 4 minus -1. And I'm going to put everything in parentheses. So I have kind of double layers of parentheses going on there. Okay, so that's my entire expression. I think maybe to make it clear, I'm going to put the original parentheses like that. I'm going to put my operations, my original operations, in blue as well. So everything you see in blue matches with the original expression. And then all we've done is to substitute the y's and the x's. So do we have parentheses? We do. So let's take care of the parentheses first. But you notice that parentheses is 4 minus -1. That's really 4 plus 1. So that really gives me 5. I'm going to leave that in parentheses and still multiply it by the 4 on the outside. And then I'm just going to drop everything else down. So this is our subtraction sign. This is the parentheses that we already took care of. So as we move from there, there's no exponents, but there is multiplication. And remember, there's 2 places to multiply, so we're going to go left to right. So we're going to first do 4 times -1. Count the negative signs up. We have an odd number. That means I get a negative answer. 4 times 1, 4. So -4. We're going to subtract, because that's the operation you see there. And then we're going to do our second point of multiplying. 4 times 5. That gives me 20. Our last step here is to do the subtraction, but I don't like that the way I see it because of the subtraction. So we're going to do keep -4, change to addition. Opposite of 20 is -20. Add our 2 negatives together, and we will get -24. So we saw our first example, which was really just multiplying and adding and subtracting. The next example we did a little bit further down brought some parentheses into the mix. So we had parentheses, some multiplying and subtraction. And it looks like the problem after that is going to be pretty similar. So the last one we're going to do is with an exponent. And here we have 3 variables. So we're going to have to kind of keep track of things. So my b is 6, which I will square. My a is, my a is 2, which is being subtracted from the b squared, minus, and here again, okay, I'm just going to make it clear these are my operations. So in parentheses, that's these parentheses here, I'm going to do c minus c. So that's going to be negative 5 minus negative 5. So we've done all our substituting. So let's see, parentheses in GEMDAS, parentheses is our type of grouping. Well, that's going to be negative 5 minus the negative, with keep change opposite, is plus 5. Well, that's just simply going to become 0. That's going to make life really easy for us. So 0. So bring everything else down. 6 squared minus 2 minus 0. So the parentheses you see work their way down. That's that 0 right there. And now we can move on with continuing with the order of operations. We did our parentheses. Are there exponents? Yeah, we do have exponents. We have the 6 squared. So don't forget, 6 squared is not 6 times 2. 6 squared is 6 times 6, right? So that's 6 times 6, just as a reminder. So that's 36 minus 2. And if you want to write minus 0, because we know that 0 trickled down from the earlier parentheses, our last step is to finish adding or subtracting in this case. Now, sometimes we don't have to keep change opposite. I think all of you would argue appropriately that 36 minus 2 is a little more straightforward than doing 36 plus negative 2. So we know we got 34 minus the 0. We don't have to worry about that. Our final answer is 34. So in these notes, there are 6 problems. I've worked through one of each of them for you. So basically, we just worked through on the notes one of every other problem. So I want you to go back, finish doing the remaining 3. So pause the video and then come back and check how your answers and how your work compares with mine.